got nowhere to go, watch the Pocket Horror Show. Pocket Horror Show. Pocket Horror Show. Hey, Mom, close the door. All right, coming back at you once again. This is the Pocket Horror Show, broadcasting as always from the Parts Unknown Studio Syndicate. Yo. I am your benevolent host, the Pocketman, the Twin Weasel.
And I'm Eddie Horror.
And we're coming to your face today talking about the greatest managers of all time. But first, can I take a shit without having to update my iTunes? I mean, seriously, every time I turn on my iTunes, I gotta update it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a thing?
Yeah, it's
just the way it's supposed to go?
Yeah, you update every day, every time before or after you take a shit. I thought it was common knowledge.
Who took over after Steve Jobs?
I forgot the dude's name.
Whatever your dude's name is, you're fucking up.
And now, this is a bit of a different type of list. It is the best managers, but this is a collaborative list. We were talking about this, and Philip could... Oh, shit.
Moving on. I don't know who you're talking about. I'm the Twin Weasel.
And the list we were talking about is managers. Twin Weasel couldn't come up with that many managers till we really started brainstorming and really brought back some of the old memories. So we have a combined top 5 along with some great honorable mentions.
You know, there's so many managers to name, and that's why we really didn't want to do it. I don't think we could have done it justice, really. And one thing I want to say is, nowadays, managers is just for show, possibly. I think they were very, very important back in the day when they had all the different territories, and you had to schedule your guy against another territory and try to book the best show, the best money, and all that. So I think that was more important back then. And you had some great managers that we're going to talk about, such as one of the biggest, which is Classy Freddie Blassie, which has been around for so long. And I know he managed, or at least was involved with Ric Flair in the early days.
Bruno Sammartino.
Hulk Hogan when he was Terry Boulder, I think was his name was.
Yeah, and a lot of that was before our time, but we have to give the proper respect to one of the greatest managers out there, the one and only Classy Freddie Blassie. You pencil neck geek.
Now, another one, before we get into the top 5, how about Captain Lou Albano? I remember him from the best known for the Girls Just Want to Have Fun video with Cyndi Lauper. And wasn't he like the Mario from the Super Mario Super Show? In the early
I don't know about that, but he definitely had an influence. As my early 20s, late teens, I grew out a goatee and I'd rubber band my goatee. Not to mock necessarily Captain Lou, but that's where I got the idea from.
You got it from Captain Lou?
Well, I didn't get it from him. I think subconsciously I did. Because I was like, I know I've seen this before. I just couldn't remember where at the time. And like, as we talk about managers and we saw the video and doing our research for this, that's subconsciously what I got.
I remember he was also on the Cyndi Lauper Goonies video, Good Enough. I think she did that was a whole crossover rock and wrestling thing. I remember that was a good song, actually. Oh, yeah. You remember that one?
Yeah. And, I mean, who could forget WrestleMania coming out with Cyndi Lauper? That was one of the coolest moments in the early days of wrestling.
Yeah. Would you consider her the first diva of wrestling? No, I guess not. No, there was many more. But she was good, and she crossed it over into MTV and really pushed the limit. And, we take it for granted now. When we say professional wrestling, now it's synonymous with WWE. Like, you say professional wrestling is WWE. Back then, it really wasn't. There were so many different territories. There was the NWA, the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Association.
AWA,
WCW. So, that's Vince McMahon crossing it over with people like that, with celebrities. That's what really brought it to the mainstream. And how about Sunny? You remember Sunny?
That, I would consider her the first diva. I mean, you had your female wrestlers before her who paved the way, but she really was the first when the WWF got a little bit edgier. And yeah, there was Sensational Sherry before her as well. That was quite edgy, but
what about the Fabulous Moolah?
A little bit before my time. I mean, back when I watched her, she was wrestling, but she was already old. She was old for a very long time. But again, kind of before my time. But Sunny, to me, will always be the first diva when we think about what a diva is today in wrestling.
All right. Well, what about, one guy, I don't know if he was, did he manage anyone else but The Undertaker? I'm talking about the, Paul Bearer, one of the creepiest guys in all of wrestling.
Yeah, one of the later days, he managed Kane. And
that's right.
Yeah, he went through a phase where he didn't wear the makeup and he used his natural hair color. He was actually like a redhead. Yeah, kind of a weird look for him. It was hard to think of him like that, but I mean, the Paul Bearer I remember had the makeup, had the black hair, had the urn.
By the way, Kane, another homeboy from Parts Unknown.
Yeah, that's right.
He lives a couple houses down.
Yeah.
And who can forget? I think you mentioned her was a Scary Sherry, or
Sensational
Queen Sherry.
Yeah, she went through a lot of names as she evolved in her character, but she was another one of the heels or bad guys as they were known back then. Her biggest claim to fame was managing the Macho Man, and then having Miss Elizabeth, back at WrestleMania 7, kind of do that whole spiel there. But definitely, she managed Rick Martel as well.
Didn't she also sing the original theme song for the
Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels? That's right. She was the original singer. If it's out there, check it out. After that, Shawn Michaels voiced it over, but she was the first one to sing that song, and obviously managed him as well. So
now I want to talk about someone that Eddie doesn't care for, but I think he was very important. Not very. He was big. He ushered in one of the biggest wrestlers. I think he's still wrestling. He kind of went out into the UFC World Ultimate Fighting Championship, MMA. Got pushed as a big card. I don't think he was respected as a fighter, really. He won the championship after like 1 or 2 fights. They considered him a paper champion. Of course, talking about Brock Lesnar. Did you think he was a legitimate fighter?
The thing about Brock, he was a big guy. He had a wrestling background, very strong. That can get you a long way. When he fought some of these real fighters, per se, guys with a fighting background, not just wrestling who went into fighting, guys with a true fighting background, he got his butt kicked. I mean, look at the fight that got him into retirement against Alistair Overeem. That was a true fighter and just wiped the floor with him. So, he was big, he was strong, he could do some stuff that other guys his size couldn't do. It got him the belt, but ultimately, do I think he was a real fighter? I mean, of course, he was in the octagon and he fought. He didn't always win, but I would consider him a true fighter.
He brought eyeballs to the UFC,
of course.
So I'll give him that. So that's why he was brought in, and but now he's back where he belongs in wrestling, and with no more Paul Heyman, who was involved in ECW first. Now he was the CEO. ECW?
He was the owner of ECW.
The owner of ECW. Okay.
And then when the merger happened, he came over to the WWF/E as a manager, as a commentator. Obviously brought Brock Lesnar, and still now is involved with Brock Lesnar. So
and as a ponytail.
I was never a fan of his as a manager, as an owner, and what he did. His time in ECW, awesome, great, did a lot for the industry. But as a manager, I don't know. I just never bought into him.
Well, let's get to our top 5. Coming in at our number 5.
Sorry, not to cut you off. He managed in WCW before ECW. He was Paul E. Dangerously.
Duly noted. Coming in at our number 5 is, and you know what? Most of the time, when it came to having a manager, you had to be a bad guy. I mean, I can't remember anyone else who had a manager, unless you're a bad guy, unless you had the one and only Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth, the first lady of wrestling, longtime manager of the Macho Man, obviously married in real life with the Macho Man, was part of Hogan's short-term management career, but always went back to the Macho Man. Miss Elizabeth, she was the one true lady of wrestling, not one that got down and dirty and had a potty mouth. No, she was a true lady, a class act. Later, though, with the NWO, she kind of turned into that heel, but for the most part, her career did. She was a good guy, as they say. She was a great manager.
Yeah, I remember she's the one who kind of split the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. Macho Man thought that Hulk Hogan was having an affair, and from what I heard, that affair might have been real.
I mean, who's to say what's real, what's not? We all know wrestling's real, but the affair part, we don't know if that's real. It could have been part of a gimmick. There's a lot of things that we hear here and there, but it's really hard to say.
Okay. Well, again, Miss Elizabeth, great. Number 4 is one of the, I would say,
one of the best managers ever. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
He was a wrestler as well, kind of back in his day. Even as a manager, he wrestled here and there, but kind of gimmicky, not really a true wrestling match. The one and only, the guy with the coolest hat, Mr. Fuji.
This is about the time where WWF was not above racist humor. Because when you ever look at his promos, he was kind of that quintessential Asian sensei guy. But really, really good. Had some of the best people under his belt. He had Demolition. I remember that. That was a big one. Did he have Legion of Doom?
No, he had Yokozuna.
Yokozuna.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And that's all.
It's hard to remember off the top of my head. But the character is what we fell in love with. Just the kind of shorter guy. Just you knew he always had a bad guy. I don't think he was ever involved with good guys at all.
Powers of Pain.
Powers of Pain. That's right.
That's right. The Barbarian,
the Warlord,
and the Warlord. Yeah, Mr. Fuji. I remember him.
But always a bad guy, always a heel. Someone you love to hate, but always a great character on TV.
Yeah. Coming in number 3 is a Funk Soul Brother. He was the Doctor of Style. He managed greats such as Hakeem the African Dream, the Big Boss Man, and who else did he have on there?
I don't remember.
We're talking about the one and only Slick,
the Doctor of Style, like Twin Weasel said. The coolest thing about him, he just had that look, had that Jerry curl going, had the flyest suits, had the red gator shoes. The coolest thing about him was his own theme song, the Jive Soul Bro.
Yeah, he could really sell an interview too. he was a talker. Speaking of that, another guy who had, I think he's the first guy I remember that had a wrestling stable under him, and I'm talking about the great Bobby the Brain Heenan.
The thing about Bobby Heenan, I will always remember, I wish he was still commentating. This guy would always have me laughing as a kid, as a teenager. I mean, the stuff he said, the trash he talked, it was just hilarious. It was hilarious then. It's even funnier now. The Heenan family was one of the major stables early on in wrestling, and he's a manager. Do you remember where he was from?
Parts of
No. Beverly Hills.
Really?
Beverly Hills, California. And he just played the part with his diamond-studded, members-only jackets, tuxedos, accompanying Andre the Giant during WrestleMania 3. Just
right.
Bobby the Brain Heenan, the best trash talker, one of, if not my favorite commentators ever, next to Roddy Piper.
No, do I remember this correctly? Did he manage the Heart Foundation?
No.
I thought I remember that. No.
That was the next guy.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah, you know what?
It's in his name.
But, let's not move on from Bobby the Brain Heenan so far, because you know what? Actually, you said he was a fantastic commentator. He was like the heel guy, the color guy. But I've heard him recently speak, I think, at like Hall of Fame induction, and something happened to him. I think he had a stroke or something like that.
He's been out of the limelight for many, many years. As these wrestlers get older, the effects of what they went through is getting to them. I don't know the details of what is going on with him, but I mean, again, he's probably in his 80s by now. So definitely an older guy.
Yeah, great guy. Fondly remembered for sure. And I know he's still doing something in wrestling, probably, but wish we can have him back as a color guy.
He may just be relaxing in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, probably. That's probably. Coming in at our number 1 is one of the greatest. I mean, he is a legend, not just in WWE. He predated all that. I remember him in NWA and WCW. And he also would sing a lot. I think he started off as a professional musician.
Possibly, I believe that. Yeah.
And he sang quite a few songs. Girls and Cars.
Girls and Cars. He wrote some of them too, along with Jim Johnson. Sorry.
Jim Johnson, another legend. And we're talking about he managed the Heart Foundation, like you said. Yeah. He managed Hulk Hogan.
Oh, yeah.
He managed Brutus the Barber.
Brutus the Barber. And and of course we're talking about the one and only Jimmy Hart. The one thing I will always remember about him, other than just him being this little, small, skinny dude, he always had the coolest sports coats. They were always airbrushed. Yeah.
He had the musical themes. He had the mega horn, Mouth of the South.
That's right.
So Jimmy Hart. That would say he was the greatest manager in our opinion. So let us know what you think as far as greatest managers of all time. You can go ahead and comment below. Remember to subscribe to our channel. And once again, I am the Pocketman, the Twin Weasel.
And I'm Eddie Horror.